welcome to everyone watching the live stream, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Marie van der Zyl, President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and the Board of Deputies is the democratically elected body which represents the Jewish community in Britain. A key part of our work is supporting interfaith relations and promoting community cohesion. We were all sickened by the killing of George Floyd and the sheer scale of violence and prejudice that Black people face on both sides of the Atlantic. But while we act as a community and must show solidarity and seek to change our whole society, there are things that we still need to do to fix in our own community. That's why we set up the Commission on Racial Inclusivity in the Jewish community to listen to Black Jews and Jews of colour to understand the prejudice and the barriers that exist. When the Board of Deputies invited Stephen Bush to chair the Commission, we knew he would be truly excellent for the role, but we could never have dreamt of the energy, enthusiasm and commitment that he would bring to it. Thank you, Stephen. In just a few months, he has already worked with Black Jews, non-Black Jews of colour and Mizrahi Jews to design a pioneering process that will help our community to fight racism and become a more welcoming space. Tonight's conversation will broaden into an interfaith discussion, and I'm so interested to learn from people of colour from 3 different faith communities. So over to you, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. As Marie very kindly mentioned, the commission I'm chairing has been delving into some of these challenging issues within our Jewish community over recent months, and the witnesses who've come forward have been incredibly helpful to me in that process, and I thank them very much. I think it's fair to say the questions of identity and how we see ourselves have never been more topical. And one of the challenges, this is, the board has been incredibly prophetic in lots of ways. This is the first time any diaspora community, and as far as we're aware, any religious community in the UK has undergone an exercise of this nature. But one of the kind of strange challenges is that one's identity is personal, but obviously one's religious identity and one's faith identity can sometimes be different, the same, can come into conflict with one another, can exercise different push and pull factors at the same time. And I think this is going to be a fantastic and very interesting discussion, certainly for me, and I hope for all of you watching at home. We have 3 fantastic speakers. The Reverend Celia Apeagyei-Collins, one of the top 10 most influential Black Christian women in the UK. Councillor Awale Olad, who's a Muslim of Somali heritage and a councillor in Camden, arguably the 3rd best borough in London after Bow, where I'm from, and Hackney, where I currently live. And Loretta Hodari, an Orthodox Jew of Jamaican heritage from Manchester. Jodeci Joseph, unfortunately, is unwell, and we're very grateful to Loretta for stepping into the breach. She's an excellent speaker and will be a brilliant addition to our programme tonight. Celia, if you could introduce yourself and kick us off, please.
Yes, definitely. I'm Reverend Celia Apeagyei-Collins. I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. I have a passion for leadership that changes our culture and our environment, that's very active in transforming for the greater good how we live. And so this is also very central and passionate for me. Although I have a great admission and a great confession, I don't like talking about race. I don't like talking about race because it conjures a lot of questions for me. The fact that I'm having to talk about race means there's something different about me or something different about another person. That makes me very uncomfortable. However, it is something that we still need to talk about. It suggests that somebody is inferior or somebody is different or somebody is superior. It's also worrying to think that how I'm treated is based on the color of my skin. So I just want to make a couple of assertions before I even continue with my story, that being Black and being Christian is problematic, but I want to substitute the word Blackness for Africanness, because somehow the connotation of being Black is somehow conjures some kind of image. But I'm African and I'm very proud of it. I can, that's who I am. However, I see myself, my whole identity is first of all, in my faith than in my race. I don't go about thinking, well, I'm a Black Christian woman. I think I'm a Christian woman. Faith informs how we think, our perspective, the lenses through which we see life. And so it informs character, it informs behavior and the way in which we relate to one another. That's more important than the color of our skin. My faith tells me, in the Christian faith from which I come from, tells me that we were all created in the image of God. Actually, Acts 17, for those of you Christian and are listening, also says that we, out of one man, God made all of us. So the whole idea for the Christian is that when I see somebody yellow, black, pink, red, green, they're my brother, they're my sister. That's where the whole idea of Christendom is about citizenship of one from one source, and that then necessitates equity, respect, acceptance, embracing in how we relate to one another. I think that those fundamentals are very, very important. Alas, that's not always been our experience, and so I think as a Black Christian woman here, one of the very first things that I had to contend with when I came to the United Kingdom was, first of all, the shock that those who brought us Christianity don't even believe in it anymore. Now, that's another argument for another day. Therefore, I had to prove that this God was real, that it was not a European concept, that there is truly a God, Jehovah up there, and I have proven him for myself, and I'm sure countless millions of Christians have done so too. That's very important. But the second thing was that I was uncomfortable because of the history of Christianity vis-a-vis the transatlantic slave trade and the whole idea of Africanism and or Black people. Of course, the colonial narrative was different. I beg to say now that we have seen that it is false. It is not a Christianity, that colonial concept. Now we know that true Christianity is rather Christ-centered, which embraces everybody, and it recognizes humanity and teaches that all human beings are equal and have equal value. Therefore, we respect each other that way. I think those were some of my biggest challenges as I came, and it's hard to hear me because I see you and I know my history. And so forgiveness became a very big thing for me, because you have to pardon that. I think that as we build bridges, you have to forgive and not forget, and make sure that this doesn't happen again. So that was a posture as a Christian, a Black Christian woman, that I had to put myself into. I think also, if there's one thing I hate, is patronizing, and that had been my experience. Now, when somebody patronizes someone, it's almost a message that says, I didn't quite expect this of you. Why didn't expect this of me when we're the same? We have the same brain, we have the same blood, and I have equal potential and equal capacity. So these are some of the things that that for me, the low expectation. Of course, let's not forget the cultural clashes, because interpretation of a faith, and I'm sure other faiths may agree, comes with a whole kind of culture. And so when culture mixes with doctrine and creed, you have a whole explosive thing. And so I think that we had to assimilate as Africans, accept that this is who we are. This is who I am as Black. I'm loud, I'm passionate, I'm vibrant. And then coming into a culture where everything is sacred, is designed or interpreted or defined as quiet, was a clash. And so you could see where people were clashing in terms of faith, and then thinking that one was inferior to the other, and working to transform one to be quieter, to be more sober. And so this is part of what we have clashed and thought of. And I think even as an African, I also came with a pride that says, I understand the concept of propitiation more than you, because in my tradition, in my African tradition, this is it. So there's already a racial clash there that we have had to work through. Because of time, I will limit what I'm saying, but over the years, we've come a long way of recognition, of partnership, of dialogue, of discourse, of washing one another's feet, apologizing for what our forefathers did, but also understanding that apologizing is not enough. We want to see change. We want to see active change and change in perceptions, change. So we've had exchange of pulpit. I'm sitting at tables where I used to be a token Black Christian woman. Now I'm no longer hopefully a token Black Christian woman. My colleagues are heard, and the things that we say are recognized. And particularly excited because of what this board is doing in terms of Black-Jewish collaboration. We share a shared experience, a history of brutality, a history of oppression, a history of being degraded. We share that in common. There's nothing that infuses collaboration like a shared historical experience. The brutality of what happened during the Holocaust and the brutality of what happened during the transatlantic trade. And I think it's important that we stand and we make sure. Otherwise, history will not absolve us, neither will our children forgive us, to make sure not on our watch. I like this dialogue. I'm hoping that it will promote equity, it will promote peace, joy, harmony, and our children. I'm a new grandma, so I'm hoping that my grandson will come and say, yeah, grandma, I'm glad you changed my world for me. And it starts with collaborations and discourses and discussions, and accepting limitations and accepting wrongdoings, but accepting that we can do something about it. So I'm hoping for the best, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you. And Awale, please.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And thank you for that, Celia. It's an important discussion to be included in. So thanks to the board and colleagues on this panel for putting the time together to take these issues head on. Yes, we are, when you are mapping out the catalysis of a constructed identity, how that identity is refined and developed, and its direct attachment to lived experiences, a Black Muslim person of my age would have a significantly different sediment at the base of their religious and cultural identity. General challenges we Black Muslims face separate into two blocks. So, for example, growing up, and I'm not sure if this is the correct term, but the double negative of being both Black and Muslim, which essentially was always put to us as if you're a Black male, you are more likely to be in poverty, harassed by the police, more likely to fail at school, more likely to be severely punished in the courts, severely underutilized in the workforce, in the skilled workforce, etc., and so forth. And this is in tandem with young Muslim males who are subject to a greater level of scrutiny and surveillance, and who are perceived more negatively than their counterparts are, and what we usually use as a tool, a wedging tool politically. So Black Muslim males are also subject to an immense amount of pressure to question your own personal religious beliefs, coupled with a stream of Islamophobic rhetoric as an extra sort of baggage to carry. Black Muslim women is the other part I wanted to pick up on, who are more likely to be subjected to higher incidences of violence and abuse. For example, Telmama statistics show that after every terror-related crime, attacks on Muslim women in particular skyrockets, and Black Muslim women are also more likely to suffer disproportionate health outcomes, discrimination, and employment. Muslims make up 4.4% of the British public, so around 3.4 to 4 million people in the UK. About 80% of Muslims self-identify as Black, and the Muslim Council of Britain estimates that Black Muslims had grown at a rate of about 14% over the past decade. Asian Muslims make up 60% of British Muslims altogether. The bulk of Black Muslims in the UK are from Nigeria, Somalia, and Ghana. The Communities Department estimates that about 50,000 Nigerian Muslims live in the UK. Around 200,000 to 300,000 Nigerians live in the UK altogether. So between 20 to 25% are Muslim. Ghanaian Muslims are estimated at around 10,000. The Somali population in the UK is estimated to be between 150 to 200,000. So the vast majority of them are Muslim, making them the biggest Black bloc of Muslims in the UK. And around 99% of them, of us, I should say, are estimated are likely to be Muslim. So, and I think that's an accurate estimation. Around 3.3% of the UK is black, so that's roughly 3 million people. We are therefore estimating that around 10% of black people in the UK are Muslim. So that's roughly the same size as the British Jewish people, if my stats from the Institute for Jewish Policy Research is correct. So black Muslims are at the same number as Jewish people in the UK. By no means are black British Muslims a homogeneous group. These groups are made up of economic migrants, long-term settled Muslims, refugees, and converts. All have a story to tell about the construction of their own self-identity, an 11 periods of tackling extremism and the global war on terror, the establishment of the axis of evil, the development of anti-terror domestic laws has had a real effect on the psyche of some Muslims. I remember observing the conveyor belt of antagonistic, controversial Muslim clerics, some of them black. I remember the British National Party openly inciting racial hatred of both black people and Muslims throughout the 2000s. I remember the harrowing murder of drummer Lee Rigby, which triggered greater discussions on the perceived identity of black British Muslims. The program and other programs, the British test, the more recent Trump Muslim ban, and open Islamophobic rhetoric around Muslims looking like letterboxes, etc., and so forth. So the point I therefore want to get across is that coming of age, a chaotic set of multi-quasi-attractors helped construct my black Muslim identity. There is therefore a clear absence of a movement, a leadership, a voice for black Muslims that serves as a counterpoint to constructive perceived wisdom. The Nation of Islam has a problematic relationship with Jewish people. So it's not the greatest example of an advocacy group concerned with minority justice. And in that absence of an organised body in the UK, there is that real opportunity to build a more moderate body that embraces all faiths and partners, especially the Jewish and Christian community, and attempts to build a just and prosperous future for black Muslims in the UK. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you for that very thoughtful introduction to the topic and to the subject. Loretta, please.
Oh, right. Good evening. Actually, yeah, starting off from where Celia started, to do with the whole idea of race, I think that's where I would come in at this, is that there's often this feeling that being black is a race, and I'm not quite sure about that. You know, what is a black race, and do we look at white people as, you know, is that a white race? So I think just as white people have a lot of different, come from different countries and come from different cultures, I think I find that I struggle with this thing. I'm looking at the topic faith, race, and identity, and I'm just wondering whether race is supposed to be representing black. And I think there's a bit of a difficulty there to, if my black skin is then construed as being a race. I don't have all the answers, but just turning towards the faith, one thing I can say about Judaism is that in terms of our race as a people, there is a big question over that as well. You know, is Judaism a race, a culture, a nation, a people? Is it an extended family? What exactly is, you know, is Judaism? So I think really it's one of the, it's a very complex thing. But one thing we do know about Judaism is that when it comes to talking about people of color, it has never really distinguished between that. It's never, it's pointed it out, but it never comes with a judgment. And so in terms of a faith, it identifies black people without any connotations. And way back in the Jewish formation, when it's been developed as a religion, Moses one of our greatest leaders, he married a black woman, and he just marries a black woman. You know, there's nothing associated with it. King Solomon is supposed to have been at one stage. He's been, according to our Talmud, to our traditions, he's been, there was a time when he was waited on by the sons of two black attendees. And it is commented on in the Gemara, which is one of our sources, that he was waited on by these two black Jews. And these two black Jews were the son of a scribe who was actually Jewish. To be quite honest, these don't seem to have been any issues at all back then. But obviously with modern day eyes, when you're looking at modern Judaism, ever since then, I think Jews look back on that, and a lot of Jews who are probably white do find it difficult to understand that there were black Jews at the time. Now, it's not dealing necessarily with race, but just the fact that Judaism was supposed to come out of a family, but it was a family that was always absorbing other people. And I think if I had anything to say about the Jewish religion, it's amazing capacity to absorb Jews. And I think, I don't know how it works for other religions, but in terms of people who convert to Judaism, they're actually absorbed by the religion, and they become, in one or two generations, they're completely absorbed in it. So it's so insignificant, and so what I can say is that I'm actually a very proud Jewish woman, because I feel that my faith says a lot of positive things about the humankind, that we're all from one man, from one woman, Adam and Eve, and that was so that nobody could say they were better than somebody else, but at the same time, nothing matters. And in terms of Judaism, there was only one thing why we should always point to a race, and we should try and destroy a race or whatever, because they did something bad to us, not because they were a particular race or they were, so Judaism has a very strong tradition of really having very high standards for women. It's the first religion to actually also establish women's rights. It established rights for slaves, and it established all these kinds of things. And so you can feel it's something to be very proud of. Now, going back to the George Floyd, coming forward to George Floyd, one of the things I think that was cast forward, into the forefront, was the whole history of slavery and how it's affected, especially in America, the lives of young black men in particular. They're the result of a past, a slavery past, that has left a legacy that has disadvantaged people, and also the way race was used, or not race actually, but the way color was used to dehumanize black people. Just going back to the religion again, all I can say is the slavery and the history of slavery of black people in America and the greater Americas, is that the Jewish religion is one that has dealt very well with slavery. Slavery was the biggest thing that ever happened to the Jewish people. It was the thing that really defined Jews. Every day in our prayers, we thank God for taking us out of Egypt. We never forget that we were slaves. And it was supposed to, it really enriches us as a person, that we should always empathize. But what it says is the modern black legacy of slavery is something that the Jewish person remembers and has dealt with. And one of the things that black slavery hasn't addressed, that was addressed instantly with Judaism, was the way that God took the Jewish people around for 40 years until they all died out. and they didn't try and build a society with the legacy of slavery. And it gives us a big understanding of why there are so many problems within, you know, for Black people, is that we were never able to have that start. We were never able to cleanse ourselves from that slavery. So in terms of my identity, I identify so strongly as a Jewish woman, and I don't feel any conflict whatsoever, apart from the conflicts that exist, like Awale just mentioned, some of the negative interactions with different factions of the Black community, not just Black Islam groups, but just ordinary Black groups that are formed. And when they get in a fight and there's something negative between Jews and Black, I do feel impacted, and my identity then, you know, gets called into question a bit. But this is all I have to say about it, is that I feel that in terms of my identity, not necessarily race, I think maybe when we say race here, we're probably thinking about Black skin. So I think when we talk about Black people and race, it's really important to know that Black people are not probably all from the same race. And that's a massive concept. And I think that's it for now.
Thank you all very much for those very thoughtful and interesting contributions. Yeah, I think that point you make about how well, I mean, one of the things which is I think very interesting about this topic, and the thing I'm finding very interesting about chairing the commission, is that of course a racial identity is wholly constructed. Viewed one way, we're all four of us are the same race because we're all human beings. Viewed one way, we're all one race because we're all British. Viewed another way, we're four different races because I am Zambian and Ashkenazi, Awale is British and Somali, Celia is Ghanaian, Loretta is Jamaican. But I think the interesting thing that the three of you all have in common is you have a faith identity that is not a construct. It is a sort of real and tangible thing that exists in a scripture that is separate from you, that you in different ways try to live up to and you know, kind of and live by the values of. Do you think I'm going to start with you, Ali? Do you think there is a different awareness? I mean, I feel like I stereotypically, like so many young Jewish men who don't call their mothers enough, worry that I'm not kind of living my values enough or doing it in the right way. But do you think there is a different quality to interfaith conversations when they happen with people who have not one but two identities, one constructed, one built on a book, as it were? Oh, sorry, you're muted, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I was saying that's a very good question, and I guess the first thing that kind of came to my mind was if I see a Black model advertising clothes, am I more likely to buy that clothes because it's been advertised by a Black model than if it was advertised by a white model? And the answer is yes. I probably would buy clothes that was advertised by a Black model more likely than a white model. When it comes to the discussions around whether kind of that constructed identity and people who kind of shared that identity with you, is interfaith discussion more fruitful? Yes, I would say absolutely. I think it's more effective. People can kind of construct that new level of identity together and start kind of having those conversations in a more kind of comprehensive and thoughtful ways, because you'll have those backgrounds, those experiences, and you're likely to have kind of built up that wealth of knowledge to be able to kind of understand the difficulties one person is going through, whereas the other person is likely to kind of share those specific identities with you. So I think interfaith discussions are critical, and I think it's even better when it happens between people of a constructed shared identity, such as the four of us having this conversation right now.
Thank you. And Loretta, please.
Stephen, sorry, could you repeat the question? I can't see it on the.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, as you very sort of elegantly said, this idea of blackness being a race is entirely constructed, but obviously this idea of Jewishness is not constructed. It exists in the Torah, it exists in our teachings. Do you think that there is a different insight when we have interfaith conversations in which the thing that all of us in this conversation have in common is there is a thing separate from what one of us are faith? Do you think then there's a different way you have of thinking about it because you are, you're aware of this identity which sometimes you've constructed for yourself, sometimes is constructed for you, as you say, where someone goes, you're black in that race, as opposed to Judaism, which is the thing that exists separately from us and is in a kind of.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have all of us speak. I think it levels the playing field of something that doesn't happen when you're all different colors. I think you're taking one of the contexts out. You're standardizing something, and if we were to have, like we are having now, if we were to have a discussion about faith. And how we're perceived, I think, we would bring something very strong to the discussion. Something very strong about how we're all perceived. I think we would have something to add there. I'm sorry,
Thank you. And please do, thank you very much for your questions so far. Please do keep coming in via the chat, and I will put them in. Celia, I was really struck by what you said right at the beginning. Because what made me think is, well, obviously I don't think of myself as black when I'm alone in a room, but I'm always Jewish. I'm always trying to live in a kind of ethical way. So, and you're always Christian. Do you think you have a sort of different insight to that because you have this identity, which, as you say, kind of sometimes you felt like you're the token person in the room, or do you think that shapes how you approach interfaith conversations as well?
I think so. And the interesting thing, Stephen, is all of us sitting here, interestingly, our roots have been oppressed, brutalized, experienced prejudice because of our faith, because those oppressors stood on faith. So, for example, when you come to Christianity, our colonial masters actually told us because we're black, we're cursed. So they had a legitimate right to oppress us. With the Jewish faith, I'm sure somebody out there in Germany decided that there's a certain race that don't quite cut the mustard. You'd go to Muslim. We've got a lot of history that has come out of faith. But interesting, because faith then defines values. Like I'm saying, it defines perceptions, it defines ethics, and it defines the value that we put on humanity. And I think for all of our faiths, I can definitely speak for the human faith. That is interesting that even with the 10 commandments, 4 of our commandments, first of all, are vertical, that relate in how you relate to God, and then the other 6 point to how you relate to humanity. And therefore, how I think and how I relate to people and how my mind thinks is shaped upon I have failed in my faith if that which I believe about God is not reflected in my community or in my approach towards other people of other faiths, creed, races, or colors. So that's very, very important for us. It's also important even for the Christian faith to realize that the first thing as human treatment is very, very important. And the emphasis has always been on, I think it was Loretta who said it, that we're created in the image of God. This is, I think, what happens when you take faith out of communities. We have a problem. Then it is void of great values that make us human, that make us responsible humans, that make us my brother's keeper. There is nothing in humanism that makes us my brother's keeper as it does with all faiths that you have heard. And so I think that's very important. In the Christian, no Christian has an excuse to show prejudice to another based on their color or pigmentation, or race, or even tribal difference, because At the end of our Christian book, the Bible, in Revelation, it says that God welcomes and is excited about people of all nations, all tongues. There must have been a reason why he made us different. And we have our boundaries different, but we're human. And with the absence of, I think, faith, values, ethics, and mores, we will become animals into civilization and in society. That's why these things are important. At the end of the day, I just looked and I smiled because I thought we all have one father. I think we root down into Abraham, our father. It's just somewhere along the line, we started to believe maybe different imports. But if you really look, we think the same things, and there's a lot of, it isn't one God. And that's not what I'm trying to say at all. But I'm saying that our faith has shaped our thinking, and so the way that we see others and the way that we must behave for the common good in society.
Thank you. One of the things that Celia touched on, I thought very powerfully, was this idea that racial discrimination is in of itself unchristian. And one of the things that I have heard multiple times in the many very productive and useful conversations I've had with our rabbinical leadership across our various denominations in the community is this idea that, you know, racism in itself is something that is not of the Torah. Awale, when we are addressing and fighting racism within our own communities, how should we do that, and how much do you think it is useful to start from the perspective, well, look, this just is not in the book, this is against these teachings? Do you think that's a helpful starting point, or can it be a bit of a blind alley? You're muted again, I'm afraid.
For God's sake, literally, for God's sake. I think the Abrahamic faith often underscore the importance of racial equality. If I take my faith, for example, Bilal was one of the first people to accept Islam in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And Bilal was a black man who was also a slave, and his freedom was bought by the early Meccan Muslims. And that symbolizes to all Muslims around the world, even to this day, that's the one key symbol of racial equality amongst Muslims, because where Islam first started was in Arabia, and it was led by the Arab tribes, and the vast majority of people who actually did accept Islam were not Arabs, and that's always reinforced as part of our faith. So it's incredibly important, especially for a faith that numbers almost 2 billion in the world, that the diversity it displays is always held up as a critical example of stamping out racism and discrimination in all its forms. So it's an example that we can all take, we can all share, to say, well, actually, the Abrahamic faiths are in itself, the teachings and the objectives within those faiths want to stamp out racial discrimination, is about stamping out racial discrimination, and it's about putting everyone on, if I can use a Brexit term, on a level playing field. So it's about that. It's about learning from each other. It's about ensuring that people of different faiths at the same time are welcomed and are seen as equal. And that's very much one of the key messages that the Muslim faith wants to convey to other people, to people of other faiths and people of other colours.
Oh, thank you. And Loretta, I feel that something that, you know, in some of our sessions, one of the things I found very powerful, indeed when we've done events like this before in this process of me chairing the division, is the way you've talked about how racism is not, you know, it's not Jewish, and you've talked, you know, and you know, your kind of awareness and understanding of teaching has definitely been a sort of huge inspiration to me. Do you feel, you know, yeah, how do you think we should challenge racism within our own communities? It feels to me that you always do a very elegant job of doing it, using the Torah, but do you think that is a useful model for us all to follow?
because I think the Torah really is just really calling us to do what is the right thing. But again, in terms of calling out racism within our community, it's been one of those very difficult calls, really. I found it very easy within the Jewish community to say, this isn't acceptable and that isn't acceptable. But looking back on how the Jewish people were divided and split up and separated from each other and just spread around the world, it's very easy to understand how everybody had gone off into their own, the Ashkenazi survived in their areas, in their, their part of the world with their own customs to keep them. The Sephardim in different parts of Africa, they survived by preserving themselves in a particular way. And being one of the things about surviving in Judaism is almost isolating yourself. And in fact, I've just heard about 10 other villages that have been found in Ethiopia that nobody knew of, because they were constructed in such a way that they could hide and protect their religion. And that very nature, which is part of the survival of the Jewish people, is part of what can make it seem a very uncomfortable place for people who don't fit in to any particular identity, whether it's Sephardi, whether it's Ethiopian, whether it's Ashkenazi, because everyone has had to fight to survive. And it's only now that we've been established, we've got a nation, that people can begin to start functioning again, coming back again. So there's a lot of things that will, I think, come naturally out of us starting to live again with each other. It's been great to see Israel open its wings to Russian Jews, to Iraqi Jews, Indian Jews, Chinese Jews, African Jews, Jews from Ethiopia, and looking to open up to more. So it's something that tells us that within the faith, there is the desire. Obviously, people have gone off and they found it harder to adjust to the fact that there were other Jews surviving somewhere else with different identity. And now it's the job of all of us to work together to call it out if it's not right, and for us to start living as one nation again, not as all these disparate people. And I think that's what's happening, is that we only get these bad experiences if we get them as a Black person or whatever. We get them because Jews from different areas are getting they're getting different they're getting all these different sort of messages, and that's because we're beginning to live together again, and we're beginning to integrate again. And so now, since we last spoke, having had chance to have a look at where we're coming and where we're going as a Jewish nation, a Jewish people, a Jewish religion, a Jewish faith, it's because it's impacting on our faith. It's impacting as well on the way the rabbis interpret things that they have found, because there's nothing new for them to find. They have already found that different Jews with different identities, Black, white, whatever, we're living together at one stage. It's just that we've had this galut, we've had this big stage where Jews were living all over the world. And yes, I think part of us coming together is now being able to say, if we're feeling, and there are situations where Black Jews have to fight to say, we are also Jews. We've also been preserving ourselves, like you have been preserving yourselves in Europe. We've been preserving ourselves elsewhere. And and it's just marvelous to see how we are developing and we are taking on these challenges. And a few years ago, when I went to Israel, I took my daughters with me, and they were just we were just a few. It wasn't normal and common. Nowadays, when we go there, it's just, you know, it's normal to see Black Jews. It's normal, and people are growing up with Black Jews in their schools. They're growing up interacting and understanding that Jews are Black and Jews are white, and it's just the process.
Thank you. Awale, one of the things I found very interesting in your sort of initial talks is you talked about the kind of the double negative, but I realized one of the sort of the things I always find strange is that most of the time when someone says something directly anti-Semitic to me, it's because I don't look like an anti-Semite's idea of what a Jewish person looks like. And so I almost have this thing where oh God, I know I should say something, but if I say something, then I'm exposing myself to abuse. Whereas when someone says something racist to me about Black people, right, that they don't think they're not surprised to know they're being racist, right? They've made a conscious choice. And I was wondering, because, you know, growing up in Bo, most of the sort of Somalis I'm friends with are Christian. Do you have that experience sometimes of kind of almost having this thing going, oh, do I have to get into this? Or do you always feel that you experience that prejudice as a double whammy in the way that you talked about?
It's very much a double whammy, because yeah, it's having to live with just the generally perceived negativity of being a Muslim, along with all the difficulties that come along with being a Black person. But when it comes to actually challenging all forms of racism, whether it's anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, generally that's the two major areas that racism, well, when it comes to kind of the phobia against one of those religions, they tend to fit into one of those blocks. I've always felt that you have to be fearless. You have to be completely fearless, and you have to challenge people head on. And I think that even people probably won't think you're Jewish. I grew up. I had a childhood friend, Black guy, and I only realised he was Jewish when he went to Jewish free school. When we went off to secondary school. So and I remember all those times where he probably faced a lot of anti-Semitic abuse, and now and again I think about, you know, the fact that he actually didn't speak out and he didn't fight them off, and I wish I could have done more to have kind of stood up and defended him or do something along those lines. So the point I essentially want to make is that we all have to be allies to each other. We all have to kind of stand up for each other, and we all have to kind of call out abuse and prejudice whenever we see it. And I think but I think it starts with you first. You have to stand up. You have to be fearless. You have to take racists head on.
Thank you. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Celia, while he talks about being an ally, what to you is the, you know, how can we be effective allies when we work in an interfaith way together, when we work as campaigning against racism, when we work campaigning for toleration of all our faiths and of faiths of others? How do we act as good allies, do you think?
How do we act as good allies? Okay, let me start from my Christian faith, because we're all influenced by our faith. Micah 6:8 says, he has shown you, all mankind, what is good. The thing about Christianity is about a community. It's about citizenship. It's about the moment you withdraw yourself, it's no good. We're not expected to sit back in our own little silo as Christians. No, we're supposed to interact with others, and show God, express God through the way that we interact with others. And so he says, he has shown you, all mankind, what is good. And what does God expect of you? But to do justice. You do justice to people who, to everybody, regardless of differentiation, regardless of what you think about them and about creed. We don't do justice to God. We do justice to one another. And we're likely to be unjust to people who we perceive are different from us. So to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. And that means you don't think you're superior to one another. But one of the most popular or famous parables of all that the leader of our Christocentric religion, Christianity, told was one that's known by everybody, which is the Good Samaritan, that showed you how to live with your neighbor. And so you live taking responsibility for your neighbor. And I think that's very important, that we take responsibility for one another. Do I take offense at the fact that Wale is going to be stopped simply for being Black and Muslim, even in bad times? Yes, because I can't remember. I think it was Mullah who said this, and I'm going to quote it very badly. Or would I take offense if somebody had a racial slur against Loretta? Yes, because they came for the Jews and I said nothing. Is that how it goes? Mullah's famous quote. They came for the socialists and I said nothing. And then I think they came for the Jews last. And then who else did they come for? They came for somebody else and I said nothing. And finally, they came for me. And there was nobody to speak up for me. I think that's how you create community. That's how you live. Definitely, that's how my faith tells me that my brother's hurt is my hurt. That we must speak. And so when this must go beyond dialogue, because we create community. Whatever we like, the differences in our faith don't make us any less human. And so faith has begun a lot of wars and fights, and it has undermined people's belief in faith, even in God. And we must make sure that history doesn't repeat itself by being one another's keeper, by continuing this conversation through defending one another. Just because somebody's of a different faith doesn't mean that I must keep silence. And I think the thing is, let's get in on the act together. Let's defend together. Let's stand for that which we know is just, that which we know is pure, that which we know is true, and stop being just in our little silos. Because at the end of the day, I can't speak for the other religions. I think my God would not approve of me if I ever kept silent. And that's the whole essence of the Good Samaritan. Different creed, different faith, looked down upon that, but that is not right. I must be responsible for my neighbor. God is not God just for Christians. He's the God of all creation. And he has sons, and all of creation makes his heart beat, makes him smile, or makes him weep. And so if we're going to say we're people of faith and we're representing whatever God that we represent, that has to be expressed through neighborliness. And I doubt if there's any religion that does not have both a vertical and a horizontal aspect to it. I can speak for mine. Mine says, if you fail in your action towards your brother horizontally, you have failed in your worship of God vertically.
Thank you. That horizontal vertical is a wonderful way of putting it. Loretta, if you could tell us how should we be good allies?
I think we're talking about commonality of experiences. I think the world's become obviously a very small place, where I would assume if we were in Africa, we wouldn't be talking about entering a room and being the only, Black person in a room. So we're talking about being in a wider world, being Eurocentric or being in the Americas. We're looking at a situation, and by being in those environments, we've ended up with some very shared, some experiences that are common to all of us. We've been Black in minority situations. It doesn't matter what religion, and there's been a reaction probably to us, and we have that in common. And I think every Black person who meets each other, they know the experience they have when they're somewhere where they're not expected to be, or they're somewhere where they're perceived to be different. I can't say it's always negative in the sense that it's a put down. Some people are very innocently sort of separating people and isolating, having different otherings going on. And I think we owe it to ourselves to form allies based on our common grounds, where we need to be able to interact with each other. We need to be able to have shared experiences outside of our faith in a way that we perceive to be safe. We need to be able to educate ourselves so that we can interact with other groups. We need to take an interest in what the other person, the other person's perspective, and at the same time be able to be strong in ourselves. So I think in forming allies, we're really looking at sharing, forming forums and, spaces where we can.
Sorry, I think I'm not sure if it's. Sorry, Loretta. We seem to have lost the last bit of you. That may be a problem at my end. But thank you very much for that. I think that point about commonality was very well made. I'm aware that we are very near the end of our time, so I want to thank all three of you for your very thoughtful, very interesting contributions. I think it certainly gave me a great deal to think about as I work out how to balance and accurately describe the different experiences and identities of our witnesses and participants in the commission process, and I hope that it will be a useful way of going through. And actually, Flora Frank comes up. It was a pastor who said those famous words: "It's crucial to respect, emphasize, and understand each other and everyone, regardless of faith, race, and creed. Equal but different." Well said, everyone. Which I think is a brilliant way for us to close out the session. Thank you, all of you, for watching along, and thank you to all three of you for such an excellent and thought-provoking session. And a very good evening to all of you at home.